Dear audience, the romantic love story between CEO James and Ly Tu Diep has officially entered a new chapter as his heartfelt proposal was a success, and their dream wedding is set for the end of the year. From that emotional moment to the loving journey of preparing for the big day, every detail is told with warmth and sincerity. If you enjoy fairy tale-like love stories, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next episodes. Under the golden hues of a late afternoon sky, with the city skyline stretching endlessly behind them, CEO James finally did what many had anticipated for years. He dropped to one knee and asked Ly Tu Diep to be his wife. The moment had been carefully planned but felt effortlessly magical. It took place on the rooftop of the same building where they first met, a place rich with memories, laughter, and quiet late-night conversations that had shaped their relationship over the years. Fairy lights twinkled like stars above them, while soft instrumental music played in the background, barely audible over the rhythm of James' heartbeat. He had rehearsed his words countless times, but when the moment came, it was his emotions that spoke louder than any carefully crafted sentence. "Diep," he began, his voice unsteady but sincere, "from the first moment I met you, I knew my life would never be the same. You've seen me through my highs and stood beside me in my lows. You are my peace, my partner, and the love I never dared to dream of. Will you marry me?" Diep stood motionless for a split second, her hand trembling as it rose to cover her mouth. Her eyes welled with tears, not of surprise, but of overwhelming happiness. This was the man who had stood by her when no one else did, who listened to her dreams, challenged her doubts, and believed in her brilliance. James wasn't just the CEO of a powerful corporation. To her, he was the man who brought her hot tea when she was sick, who read poetry with her under the stars, who never stopped choosing her, even on the hardest days. She nodded before she could even find the words, and then whispered a soft, emotional yes. Cheers erupted from a small group of close friends and family who had secretly been watching from a hidden terrace nearby. James stood and slipped the ring, a simple but stunning piece of craftsmanship he had designed himself, onto her finger. The diamond sparkled in the light, but nothing shone brighter than the joy in their eyes. For James, this proposal was not just a milestone, it was a declaration of his deepest truth. Despite all his success in the boardroom, it was this moment, this woman, and this commitment that made him feel truly accomplished. All the late nights, the corporate wins, and the global headlines faded in comparison to the feeling of knowing he would soon share his life with the woman who had given his world meaning. The rooftop scene faded into an intimate celebration, filled with laughter, toasts, and quiet glances exchanged between the newly engaged couple. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of lavender and gold, James and Diep stood hand in hand, a couple that had weathered storms, built dreams together, and now stood on the edge of forever. That night, a new chapter began, one written not in business plans or spreadsheets, but in promises, trust, and the enduring power of love. The world seemed to slow down the moment Ly Tu Diep said yes. Time, for a brief second, stood still, the wind softened, the lights glowed warmer, and all the noise of the city below melted into a single heartbeat shared between two souls. Her voice, though quiet, rang louder in James's ears than any boardroom applause he had ever received. That one word, simple, yet so powerful, was all he needed to hear. Diep's tears shimmered in her eyes as she looked at the man kneeling before her, still holding the open ring box, his expression raw with vulnerability and love. This wasn't just a proposal. It was the culmination of everything they had survived together, the long-distance days, the silent misunderstandings, the sacrifices made in the name of ambition, and the late-night conversations about dreams too fragile to voice aloud. For Diep, saying yes wasn't a spontaneous decision. It was a journey. She remembered the first time she had met James, how cold and reserved he had seemed, hidden behind layers of professionalism and ambition. But as days turned into months, she saw more, the way he always left a little early to call his mother, how he made sure his team never worked through holidays, and the quiet pain in his eyes when he thought no one was watching. Behind the CEO persona was a man with depth, loyalty, and a heart that, slowly but surely, began to beat in sync with hers. And now, that man was standing before her, not as the powerful executive the world knew, but as the man she loved, nervous, hopeful, and completely hers. As she reached out her hand, James gently slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Not just in size, but in meaning. The ring wasn't flashy, but elegant and thoughtful, just like him. A single diamond nestled in a delicate setting, surrounded by a band engraved with the words, "Still us, always." She looked at it for a moment, then back at James. "You remembered," she whispered, smiling through her tears. It was a phrase they had shared since their first year together, a promise that no matter how much life changed, it would always be the two of them at the center. James nodded, unable to speak, his emotions catching in his throat. Instead, he pulled her into a tight embrace, holding her like he never wanted to let go, because, from this moment forward, he never would. A wave of applause and joyful cheers broke the silence, reminding them they were not alone. Hidden just out of sight had been their closest friends and family, quietly waiting for the signal. Champagne bottles were uncorked, cameras flashed, and laughter echoed into the evening air. It was an intimate celebration, carefully curated by James, who had planned every detail not to impress, but to reflect everything Diep loved: warmth, sincerity, and the people who mattered most. As the night unfolded, James and Diep found themselves seated beside each other, hands intertwined, as their loved ones gave toasts filled with affection and nostalgia. Stories were shared, some embarrassing, many heartwarming, of their first vacation gone wrong, of the time James missed a billion-dollar meeting just to take care of Diep when she was sick, and how she once flew across the globe just to surprise him with a home-cooked meal on his birthday. Each tale painted a deeper picture of who they were as a couple, imperfect, stubborn at times, but fiercely devoted. Two people who had grown not only together but because of each other. By the end of the evening, under a sky now studded with stars, James leaned over and whispered in her ear, "This is just the beginning." And Diep, resting her head on his shoulder, smiled and replied, "I know." In the days following the unforgettable proposal, James and Diep found themselves stepping into a new and exciting chapter, not as lovers navigating the uncertainties of courtship, but as two souls preparing to walk down the aisle and build a life together. Their engagement wasn't just a milestone, it was a promise that their love, tested by time and trials, was ready to bloom into something even more profound. Unlike the extravagant weddings often associated with high-profile figures like CEO James, the couple chose something more intimate and meaningful. Together, they envisioned a ceremony that felt deeply personal, one that reflected their journey, values, and the quiet strength of their bond. No flashy headlines or over-the-top displays, just two hearts saying yes again, this time in front of the people who mattered most. They selected the end of the year for the wedding, a season of reflection and new beginnings. For them, it was symbolic, the close of a chapter marked by challenges, distance, and growth, and the start of something beautifully unknown. Winter would soon arrive, but in their hearts, everything felt like spring. Diep, with her natural elegance and artistic eye, took the lead in planning the aesthetic details. She dreamed of a wedding filled with soft colors, gentle lighting, and floral arrangements that whispered rather than shouted. Roses, white orchids, and blush-toned peonies would line the aisle. Every candle lit, every table setting chosen, every note of music played, it would all carry a piece of their story. James, despite his demanding schedule, was present every step of the way. He wasn't just the man signing off on ideas, he was her partner in every decision, from the venue to the playlist. He even surprised her by insisting on writing his own vows. "This wedding isn't about showmanship," he said. "It's about truth, and I want my words to come straight from my heart." Together, they sat by the fireplace one evening, notebooks in hand, scribbling ideas, pausing to laugh, sometimes falling silent as memories came rushing back. James recalled the rainy night she waited outside his office with soup when he had the flu. Diep remembered how he flew halfway across the world just to be with her for one lonely birthday. Their vows would be more than poetic promises, they would be real, lived-in declarations of love. Their families were overjoyed. James's father, a man known for his stoicism, broke into rare smiles whenever the wedding was mentioned. Diep's mother began sewing a traditional dress for the tea ceremony, saying, "This isn't just a wedding. It's a blessing passed down through generations." Even their friends, many of whom had seen the couple weather long flights, career shifts, and moments of doubt, began to call the upcoming wedding the love story of the year. As plans moved forward, so did the quiet transformation of their relationship. They spoke more gently, loved more openly, and found comfort in the idea that the future, with all its unpredictability, was something they would now face as one. There were no illusions of perfection, no fantasies of a flawless life ahead. What they had was better: honesty, friendship, deep respect, and a love that had been carefully built, not just felt. Each day brought them closer to the moment when they would stand before the world and make the most sacred vow two people can share: to stay, to grow, and to love without end. And as the year slowly turned its final pages, the story of James and Diep was only just beginning.